worship. It's something that has been thrown around a lot in the church over the last, since God really has come to us. In fact, when worship is mentioned in the first few books of the Bible, it mentions people falling down and laying there, basically. But in the modern day church, worship doesn't always mean that. In fact, a lot of the times when you mention the word worship, people automatically assume music. We even have a subgenre of Christian music called worship music. Now, I'm not saying music is not part of worship. In fact, it's a very integral part because it's a way of drawing up emotions and feelings inside of us that other things are not able to do, to help us be able to concentrate and focus and aim our hearts towards God. I love music. I love worship music that is focused on God. But I also understand my worship does not stop or start with music. Worship is truly something that we do. In the Baker's Bible Encyclopedia and Dictionary, it says that worship is something that we pour adoration towards God, or focus our adoration towards God. And we will worship Him because He is worthy of that worship. Understand something really quickly here. I'm not saying that worship music is bad. I'm not saying that worship music is something we shouldn't have. I'm saying if you have the excuse that we miss worship, then your heart is in the wrong spot, possibly. Because worship music is just one of the ways that we can focus our hearts from where we are to where we are with God. In fact, in the book of Romans, chapter 12, I think Paul expresses it best when he says, "Therefore I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship." To break that down a little bit, he's saying because God is merciful, we can worship Him fully. Because God is able to give us grace in His mercy, we're able to worship fully. Up until Jesus' death, there was a separation when it came to worship. You had to build an altar. You had to do exactly what God's asked you to do in order to be pleasing to God. After Jesus' death and resurrection, that was no longer that way, and we could come openly and say, "Okay, God, I'm here to worship," and you start focusing. If you look through the Old Testament and the New Testament, multiple times when they are worshiping, music is not involved. Prayer, quiet is often involved. When the entire family worship, they worship together in home. When the entire congregation or the entire country of Israel worshipped, they worshiped together, coming together, making sacrifices. In the book of Acts, we see multiple times them using not just music, but prayer and teaching is also a worship. One of the things that I love to do when I do camps is I love to have mandatory hours of quiet. Every time I do this, it is an amazing and wonderful experience. In fact, multiple people say that's one of the better experiences they have. The quiet is deafening. It is probably one of the most impactful worship moments we have the entire weeks that I've ever done camp. The second thing at camp is when we go to campfire, we bring no instruments, we bring no plan. We say, "Okay, God, here you go." And we sit down and say, "Okay, let's let worship begin." And when worship doesn't begin, or worship does begin, is not with the music. It starts in our hearts. That's really what this comes down to, is what is in our hearts. If we are coming to God on Sunday morning, or whenever we get the opportunity to worship online, are we coming with our hearts open? Or are we coming with the ability like, "Oh, I just got to do another thing"? Something to think about is, how are we worshiping? How are we able to worship together? I know we're all separated in our ways. The early church in Acts had that same problem. Israel multiple times got scattered and we're not able to worship anymore. Yes, we are in that opportunity right now to worship in a different way. But in the same way, we can still focus our whole heart, our whole mind, and our whole self, giving everything that we have towards God. Whether that be with music, whether that be in silence, whether that be in prayer, Whether it be in anything that you do, in all that you do, give it to the glory of God, to the best of God. I hope this inspires you to think beyond where we are, beyond where you are, and to see that God is a much bigger God than we are. Know that Jesus loves y'all. Know that you guys can worship wherever you are, whether it be scrubbing toilets, or whether you are singing songs, or you're sitting there in silence, or you're able to just go for a run, go for a walk, go for a drive. God is there. You can worship Him. Worship Him to the fullest of your hearts. Deuces.